bloody non-murder story. The mystery we're going to talk about today is, did Frederick Cook make it to the North Pole to be the first man in recorded history to make it there?
Yeah.
Now, before we get into the story, of course, as normal, we got this from one of our listeners because you guys suggest so many great stories.
Then word gets out, and
Like the Caledonia War.
Yeah.
I can't remember if Don was on Facebook or email, but thank you, Don, regardless of how you sent it in. We're annihilated.
yeah, and then and word gets out. Reach the North Pole. How do you prove it? You know, you can't plant a flag there.
You can't. And yeah, we're going to go into some of that. But part of what makes this mystery so weird...
Oh, it's these guys have got a reputation for bad luck.
Thereafter discovered that he wasn't the only one claiming to have reached the North Pole at the same time, basically. There's a guy, I know Devin's going to laugh.
Matt.
Books, the man to reach the North Pole first was Rear Admiral Robert Peary.
Yeah, I don't think he did.
I've got my opinions, but I'm going to hold that till we get through all of this.
Okay.
So let's talk about Mr. Cook.
Captain Cook?
No, not Captain Cook. Frederick Cook was born in New York in 1865, and he grew up. He became a surgeon. He almost immediately
Whoever's left.
And you know,
whoever's left while they retire. Or
initially, he wasn't really big on the idea, but his wife and child, so that's a great idea. Started going on expeditions. Initially, he was serving as the surgeon of the team that he would go with, and then after this group always dies,
Yeah,
they're just going to stop, set up, and then finding people to finance it, and he'd go out in the world.
Yeah,
Cool.
and
And
his first expedition was with Robert Peary.
It was with Robert Peary.
The Rear Admiral.
They were
bitter rivals.
And you know, that's the thing, is it was the 1891 to 92 Arctic expedition is the one that he went on with Peary. But yeah, there was no bad blood between them. Actually, I'm pretty sure that if I remember correctly, Cook saved his life.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, because Peary broke his leg so badly.
Yeah, well, there was that time, but also the time that Peary looked like kind of lost or marooned up there. And then
and he went.
That's kind of what I think happened.
Awesome. All right. Well,
he really saved his bacon twice.
He did.
Yeah.
So yeah, these guys got along. Spania.
If you're a ghost of one of those.
Though I will say that from everything that I've read, Cook was a bit different than Peary, and most of the explorers who were operating. Not even going to go
Don't
there.
even.
Okay, well, for 1900 time frame, most guys, they'd go to an area, they'd hire a local crew, and then they would tell them what to do. And you want to know what we have. We learned the language. He got to know the people, and sometimes he was more interested in the locals, or as much interested in the locals as what he was there to find.
So he was like being a good guy or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think Cook actually was a pretty decent guy, despite all the bad things that have been said about him.
I would agree with that, absolutely.
Yeah.
The first record that Cook wanted to set, or tried to set, all other episodes available to said that he successfully was the first man to climb to is Thinking Sideways podcast.com. Not be familiar with the name McKinley, because today, officially, the name is not McKinley. I believe it's Denali, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But
Which is the tradition.
comment the other day on Facebook, we always kind of joke that nobody, most folks would know it as McKinley, and we're going to keep using that name because anytime you do the reading, it's always referred to that. So just to keep it
because it was.
If you don't know McKinley, it's in basically the middle of Alaska. It's in is it the Denali Range?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Denali Range.
It's like a national park.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's a huge mountain, right?
It's absolutely huge. It is, here, let me grab the number, 18,000 feet from base to peak. And the peak itself is just over 20,000 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
We are On Facebook, we have the people had tried to make it to the peak, and a lot of people would climb the lower reaches of it.
Yeah.
And busy and fantastic, farthest they would go. But what happens? Cook says, "I'm going to climb this." He takes his party. They get most of the way up. Then he takes one other man. It is thinking sideways without it, comes back and says, "I made it to the top," and everybody went, "Okay."
Cool.
Great. Okay, well, congrats. We'll put your name in this little book we have.
That later, right?
We're talking about this now because it does come up later.
Cool.
Oh, and because this is going to be important. Remember I said he took one person with him to the top of McKinley? Mm-hmm. That guy's name is Ed Burrill. So remember that name because it will come up in a bit.
Okay.
So the climb on McKinley was in 1906.
Oh, did he plant a flag or anything like that when he went up there?
He went up there. I've seen a photo that is. Get a hold of us at Thinking Sideways Peaky Bit. You know, like there's not a whole lot at the actual peak.
Tippy top.
Yeah.
He planted the flag. There's a picture of him holding it.
Yeah.
But I never saw anything that said he specifically planted it.
Okay.
But he did that, and that's getting a little insane.
It
There's
is.
we get a lot of emails.
His next Arctic expedition, and in 1907 he went to Greenland, and while he was in Greenland, he then announced.
You, please. We'd like your email.
No. I
Just be patient with us.
He made the announcement. I want to say it was in August of 1907. He couldn't actually leave, I believe, until February because that was when.
Got to wait for the ice to freeze up, right?
Yeah. He had to. So the timing of it was very, very specific. The thing that you need to know about where he left is he left from a place, and I hope I get this right, Anoatok, I believe is how you pronounce the name of the village. It's an Inuit village. Be patient. And I'm telling people, I'm sorry, I'm tip of Greenland. So it's really pretty far up there.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to go for Anahuac.
Letting everybody know that we are on Patreon. That village to the actual where they say the North Pole is going to be is 700 miles.
Okay.
So it's a 700-mile overland journey. .com/thinking sideways conditions.
Oh, yeah.
Is what he's going to do.
But I think, for the first part of it, I think there was still like caribou or things like that wandering around.
There were animals. They were for part of the beginning, and it wasn't as if he took, for the final bit of his race to the North Pole, he took 2 local Inuit with him. But he didn't just start out with those 2 guys. I think he left, if I remember correctly, he left as part of a bigger party.
Yeah.
And then he and that party split ways. They were going to do something else, and then he made his run for the North Pole. The trip wasn't expected to take but a whole 9 yards to you. And a year had gone by. They figured that everybody had died.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to go ahead and get out of here because 14 months later.
Looking a little worse for the wear, as I understand.
Yeah, absolutely worse from where. What happened is they made the run, and I really just want to go take it to the North Pole, and they didn't take into consideration the movement of the ice flows. They didn't think that water. They had to make all these detours, and they ended up southwest of where they wanted to be by 200 or 300 miles.
Yeah, I think wasn't he expecting the ice to move eastward and it wound up moving westward instead?
Yes, that's exactly. It went the opposite direction. So he's like, well, I'll just keep going straight south and it'll always be okay, but everything's moving under your feet. That doesn't work. The data points that we'll use here for his actual trip. From when, according to Cook, 360 miles, and they did that in 24 days.
Okay.
That comes out to an average of about 15 miles. when you consider it's not smooth ice. It's going to be ice flows that are going to heave. It's craggy. It's nasty. I decided I'd go ahead and take a look.
Does not compute.
You never
Did you go on Street View?
Well, it turns out you can't because there's nothing there.
There's no streets?
There's no streets. And here's the problem. Unlike the South Pole, there is no landmass at the North Pole, so it's not a actual fixable point. You can't, as you said with the top of the mountain, plant a flag.
Yeah, well, you can. I think
But
Perry,
it's not going to stay in the same
No,
spot.
it's not. It's going to move off. But,
It's-
but
yeah.
Perry supposedly planted a flag.
Stories of things.
A flag. And then pulled it down, left a bit of it in a tube in a curve.
Hello, humans.
Just wasn't going to do any good.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything, yeah.
But
Okay.
the point is, it's like it's a moving target.
Sure.
As I said, though, of course, they missed
By my sister Beans. Say hello,
100
Beans.
miles because they ended up living in a cave on what is known as Devon Island. So it's your island,
Well, it's spelled wrong, but yeah.
not according to the internet.
Get enough recognition.
I'm sure it's Steve and Joe Island anywhere nearby.
No, there isn't. But they ended up living in a cave. They barely survived off of local animals. They were killing. They were hunting. When they ran out of ammo, they were hunting with spears, which is pretty hardcore, if you ask me, in the Arctic.
Yeah.
They managed to get back to the village. They arrived in the spring of 1909. So they left February
Taking over today.
in 09. So that's a heck of a long trip.
Yeah, it is.
Cook would eventually
Present how often they don't get it right and how much.
North Pole. That would be the date that he said he got there would be the 22nd of April 1908, which means that, he made it there in about 2 months.
Sorry for the interruption. I've got
Joe, it was you that said they were looking a little worse for wear for
Yeah.
living off of just whatever animal they could kill and
Yeah.
hiking in freezing conditions.
probably a scurvy at least, huh? We actually have
To the village. Of course, Cook wasn't just going to turn around and head home. He hung out for a while to recuperate. While he was in the village, he met a man named Harry Whitney, and they became kind of buds. They were both English speakers. I'm sure that helped in a village where, it's Inuits, and he could speak the local language. Both of them could, but it's always nice to be able to use your native tongue. I'm sure that was something to bond over.
Yeah.
Whitney was there on, I wouldn't call it a safari. It was set to come back for him several months later. He told Cook, hey, I got this ship coming. If you want, you could just hook a ride with me and I'll take you back down to New York.
Reaction.
Woohoo! Should have yes and no because of the way things turned out, but Cook didn't want to wait that long, so instead he decided to book
So this is something that's actually kind of
buy sled and go all the way to go home, or as far south as he could till he could catch a boat at one of the major lanes. What ended up happening, though, is he had 2 guys set up to go with him. The day before he's going to leave, one of them got sick, and so it was just going to be Cook and one other Inuit, and that really put him in a bind because he couldn't take all of his stuff with him, because one sled down means one sled.
unexplained portion of it. Food.
He's got to bring food. So Whitney, being a good guy, said, hey, if you...
Story. There was
No big deal. So he left all the heavy stuff that he didn't need. So his navigational tools like a sextant, all of his records, except for his own
Are we
personal...
gonna introduce ourselves?
Oh, you want to do that? I think
It was his journal. They call it his journal. It's manly if it's journal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just because he had stars and it was pink doesn't count. It was journal. It was manly. Start from the top.
Yeah. Diary.
But he left all that stuff with him because it was heavy, and he didn't need any navigational equipment because he was just heading down the coastline. It's pretty easy to follow the coastline. So he goes ahead, he heads south, he eventually gets home, he makes the announcement that he had done it, and great. On the 1st of September, the world learns that Frederick Cook was the first man to make it to the North Pole.
He didn't just tweet it out.
Way up there.
Yeah.
Can't just do that.
AT&T will cover you up there.
On our website. But to be honest,
Yeah.
That's where I'm going to leave Cook's story for the moment.
I thought we were talking about Cook.
We are, but there's another big player, and we need to switch gears.
Yes.
Perry, as we had talked about before, he had made a bunch of Arctic expeditions. You know, he'd gone with Cook, or Cook had been with him a couple.
sidewayspodcast.gmail.
Something like 8 or 9 attempts to get to the North Pole.
Yeah, and then
8 or 9 failed attempts before his last attempt, which he will learn he says was successful.
yeah, and the reason Cook did stop going along with them in these expeditions. Did you hear about that? He wanted to sign up, but then Perry put down the requirement that nobody was allowed to write their memoirs of the expedition before
Yes.
he published his.
Yes, which is a finance. Is that, oh great, I'll pay you whatever I pay you, but you can't make any actual bonus money. I think Cook was writing more about things like the locals and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, which wasn't even gonna step on Perry's toes. But that you're right. March 1909, Perry left for the North Pole. He went ahead. He was already in the Arctic. He says,
Oh, Lord.
party that he has, they head 280 miles north heading towards the North Pole. And they didn't leave from Greenland. They left from a different location that actually longitudinally put them closer to the North Pole. But he was still kind of in that same region, because that evidently is where you start from.
In the Arctic Circle.
Yes. Yes. On the 1st of April of 1909, Perry split off from the main.
Okay.
Then would make the final dash for the North Pole. They did.
Said he had.
Right. This is when Cook is still presumed missing.
Right.
And
Okay.
so yeah.
Just
yeah.
wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
No. So it is weird when you read it because technically
Thinking Fox.
Perry ever got that.
Yeah, but he was still missing. So.
But so he's missing. So Cook, Perry's like, well, nobody's got it yet. I'm going for it.
Yeah.
Because that evidently was his white whale. So he goes with these guys, and they go to what Robert Perry says is the North Pole. He says, we've got the North Pole. He plants his ceremonial flag. He then, like I said, tore off a strip of it, put it in a little jar, and buried it in a crevasse, and they beat feet back out of the circle. And when he got back to the party, then they go back to their launch point. Everything's hunky-dory, except that at that point, he... from place to place. They're going on little hunting trips. They're just kind of having a good old time. He's in...
And are constantly berated by
that he made it to the North Pole.
Oh, you'd think it would be.
I would too, but maybe it was I'm basking in the fact that I finally did it. I finally
Berated.
Did you say earlier that he said they were?
was the only one of the
Start that over.
navigate.
Oh.
Yeah, he's the only one that could use a sextant, right?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And you got to remember is that, and this is, Joe might have to help me out on this to how you would navigate, but you use a sextant to find two fixed points and figure out the distance between them, and as they change, you use that to figure out your longitude. Is that correct, Joe?
I think that's how it works.
Okay.
I don't use the sextant.
I don't either,
very
but
few
the
people
point
do
is that nothing is north of you. Everything is south. That means you're all of the reading. So he's the one that has done all of that, I'll call it the hard math,
Okay.
to
okay.
figure it out.
And
Sure.
Isn't it friggin' cap? Okay, that's our student guy. I can't remember his name now. And they're just at this place, and one day this assistant says, you know, this place has kind of a North Pole-y feeling to it, don't you think, Admiral? Flag and everything.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
what that guy says.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
absolutely right. That's not the version I know that you will read from Perry himself, of
Sure.
course.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
not going to put it that way.
No.
Well, I think, you know, in retrospect, if I were either one of these guys, Cook or Perry, I would have made sure I had several people in my party and that every single one of them knew how to navigate.
Actually, you know, the funny point is what we're getting into here is that if you haven't already figured it out from what we're leading up to,
A young man is checking.
hole between Perry and Cook.
Yeah.
The guy who ended up and I think he did it in 1911, but everything that went on between these two, which it turns into a giant public battle.
Oh, yeah, that was a big mud fest.
This guy made sure
So I want to get
all kinds of signs and all kinds of markers. Like he dotted every T, or
Yeah.
crossed every T and dotted every I.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, Raul, yeah. That
Yeah.
was his first name, and I'm not positive on the pronunciation. I listened to it a couple of times, and I'm still not sure. But
All right.
the point is, that's why he went to such extremes.
Smart move, dude.
So Perry finally makes it to Greenland.
He gets to Greenland, and when he gets there, he starts hearing rumors that Cook is back, that Cook wasn't dead, and that he's back, and that, hey, he's all... And he's like, wait a minute, that's not possible. And he ends up getting to the same
His musket.
inn. And of course, Whitney is still there because he's just having his little sportsman vacation. And Perry talks to... Oh, that's going on the blooper. He had talked, and Cook had told him, he said, listen, don't tell anybody. Until I've made my official announcement, don't tell anybody. And so he plays dumb. He's like, sure. Perry then goes on and tracks down the two Inuit that went with Cook, and he interviews them. And he basically interrogates them. And he takes away from it, and we'll later learn he makes all these statements about how they disagreed with what Cook is claiming. But what you need to know is that natives of the area at that time, they didn't have...
No.
They knew distances in days. Took me a day to get there.
Now let's fire the...
Was Perry didn't speak the language.
He
did
didn't speak the
Okay.
language, so they're, you know, and he's showing them maps, and they're just kind of drawing on it. Whitney, who does know,
What's going on? The bloopers reel.
probably
Yeah.
said, yeah, they said they didn't know what the angry white man was asking them, and what the pieces of paper that he kept pointing at. But Perry didn't care. So once he figures that out, well, that lights a fire underneath him to
yeah.
get back to the mainland and stop all this. Here's the other thing that really, really, really bites Cook in the rear. And that is the fact that Whitney, remember he had a ship chartered to come back and pick.
They did a reproductive.
And he'd have to wait there at the tip of Greenland for another 6 months before
Yeah.
keen on that idea. Well, being such a nice guy, Perry says, hey, we'll give you a ride home, no big deal.
We end up with.
Yeah.
Perry specifically stops him and says, hey, is any of that stuff Cook's? And he has to admit, well, yeah, there's these trunks here.
Jerk.
Total jerk move.
Yeah.
And some of the things that go on in this story make me think that he did that very intentionally, knowing that it was gonna screw Cook over.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So poor Whitney, what's he do? He goes over to some rocks, he digs a big hole, and he buries them so that at least they're sort of secure, and Cook could come back for him.
I mean, has anybody actually gone out looking for these things?
I imagine
know they've never
that
been
they
found
have,
again.
but they've never
For you guys to look at.
Where are we gonna have links for that?
found them after a couple of years. They were probably destroyed
Probably
anyway.
trashed, yeah.
You know, I mean,
Which is ThinkingSidewaysPodcast.com.
they're trunks, not like they're totally waterproof.
Oh,
There is
not
going
at
to be
all.
some moisture, and that's going to just destroy paperwork and tools in no time flat. Destroying Cook's claim. He meets up with some of his supporters. What are these guys called? They are the
First time that he did it successfully on his own. The
off dudes.
horse does.
who financially back his expeditions. And they get together and they start doing some kind of devious stuff. First off, what Perry does is he tells everybody, of course, that, hey, I got there, and Cook is totally full of it. And he communicates that a week after Cook has said he got there. Perry's information comes through and says, A, hey, I totally got there, and B, then when he gets back to the world, everybody says, well, great, let's see your doc.
I was about to trend that direction, so it's cool.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I will give you my fully authorized version as soon as Cook gives you his. A bit of a game of I'll show you mine if you show me.
Anyway,
He made Whitney bury it all in the Arctic.
Yeah.
And
I gotta say, I think that between these two, not to give it away or anything, I think Cook
Wouldn't the cabbie have meant
Cook ended up for the rest of his life getting the short stick. He
Yeah.
absolutely got the short stick, though in a way it seems to have given him peace, but he really got hosed a bunch after this.
Oh yeah.
That was where I was headed, though, was the Perry Arctic, whatchamacallit, what were they?
club?
The club, thank you. Yeah, his fan club. They did what was so common at that time and so
Tall. Or 8 foot.
how Cook had been the first to go all the way to the top of Mount McKinley.
With an 8-inch tall. Yeah, no, there was.
For years, Brill had been going around publicly saying, we made it to the top, it's so awesome, telling everybody about it. Until suddenly,
8 foot tall trees.
an affidavit from him that is signed comes out saying that they faked the whole thing and it's a total lie. $5,000 and $10,000 at the time.
So like
They totally blatantly paid him off. They made no claim that they hadn't done it. Or Brill never ever even pretended that he hadn't been paid off. It's equivalent to like 125 grand US today. So that's a huge chunk of change. I
Yeah.
can see why he would turn on him for the money.
By pretty much acknowledging that he was bribed to sign that affidavit.
He did.
her name was just Jane
You have a
Doe.
phone
That's
book?
Yeah.
It should have, and I never could get a good, clear understanding of why Cook went about doing things the way.
or why Joe still has a phone book.
You know,
And in the beginning, the public believed him, but because of all the underhanded moves that Perry was pulling, they started not.
have you ever gone out on the web and because they say, oh, you can go to the.
Fighting. I think that's probably what happened for the
He's
most
probably
part.
spent a lot of time, like, on the McKinley thing. He probably spent a lot of time just really, really wishing that he had buried something at the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
That's what I'd be thinking.
Yeah. Well, after that affidavit shows up, then of course this is where Perry comes out with his account of what Cook's Inuit, well, they wouldn't be companions, said about him and what the route that they took.
Phone number, link. You click on that and you go to the page that says, hey, what?
Completely different route, meaning that Cook just took him kind of in a circle and in a completely the wrong direction intentionally, is what this is making it out to be.
Yeah,
True.
Do you guys know where to
No,
go?
I don't
said, hey, I had to do this. He publicly said, I had to do this. This is what Perry made me do.
I mean, leaving the stuff behind.
Leaving the stuff behind. And he said that Cook.
that don't make their phone numbers readily available to me. I'm really honest with you.
You don't know, but
Yeah.
but he had overheard the conversation when Perry was interrogating the two Inuits, right?
Correct.
And so, did he ever show up and say, "Hey, no, that the Inuits did not say this to Perry. He's lying."
We know that there are written accounts of it. I don't know the exact interaction of did he show up at some legal proceeding or something, because there really was only one legal proceeding, and by that time that happened, it was way down.
That's why maybe he was on safari
Again.
Yeah, probably.
I think probably
out.
Yeah, like today I spent.
though was the National Geographic Society, because they were a big backer of Perry. They loved him. They were, work, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I know, and
People for them. They went ahead and they immediately said that Perry was right and Cook was wrong, and then later on and investigate the whole thing, which of course, because there was no papers from Cook, that was easy. They went ahead and checked out Perry's story. They figured
check
it out.
Perry's story.
Perry's story.
And this committee was like mostly his friends, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
two of the people he knew extremely well, and one of them said that I think he came out and said that he was
disconnected. I called and left a message. I haven't heard back, so I don't even.
well personally. They all knew him personally, so it was totally an inside job.
Yeah.
So
Everybody learned that Robert Perry went ahead and made it to the North Pole, and he was the first one, and nobody really knows who Cook is.
Yeah.
This schmear campaign.
Then it was a schmear campaign.
Absolute mudflinging contest.
Yeah, he's again. Perry was not a classy guy.
No. But that is
Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Thinking
theory section.
what?
Oh,
Yep.
Cool.
So this is really it's three simple theories. There's only three headings here, and the first one is, of course, that Cook made it there before Perry. We don't have any documents to back this up, but he was one of the first, or he was the first person to ever describe the frozen polar sea, as being in continuous. Fact that he basically encountered a giant flat top and the sea ice around it.
That was a fixed object, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And that was something that was backed up by later explorers who went to the area.
They found the same thing. Ah, okay. Okay. Pause.
That.
Yeah. Of course, if you went a different route, you could have missed it.
Absolutely true. Cook, also seemed to be pretty good at his navigation. I mean, he knew how
Thinking sideways. Another heart.
on these kind of Arctic expeditions. I don't know why I said things.
Yeah.
Stream of consciousness here needs to stop. But overall, as you said, he seemed to be a pretty honest guy, and he didn't seem to be the kind of guy that would just to grab glory say that he did something.
Yeah,
That's my personal impression.
Yeah, it's my impression too. Is that Cook had a much.
See, you're not going to be the only one on the blooper reel now.
Good.
Gentleman's honor.
There was. I think there was some question that he was making. Yeah, it is entirely possible, and quite possibly, probably true even. But if they were honest mistakes, so he might have honestly thought that he was at the North Pole.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you that
We're doing the severed feet.
when the North Star is right over you, you're at the North Pole. Nothing to it.
Not easy.
Yeah, it's that easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
dude. Laid on my back. The North Star was directly above me. It was
Yeah,
perfect.
there you go.
It's really easy. It's fun.
It all felt really North Poley.
Yeah.
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 North Pole?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna let that go. Our next theory is, of course, that Frederick Cook faked the entire thing. The quote-unquote loss of all of his data. Well, that means that we can't confirm that he really did it. Figured out quite easily that he was full of it, and that he didn't know what he was doing.
So anyway,
Also got to think about the fact this guy was lost for a year in the Arctic. And when he got back to his starting point, he could have said, you know what?
so
That crap. I'm going to say that I got there because I've earned it.
Or, for all I know, we got there.
Yeah. And intentionally. He didn't actually do it. Yeah. That's completely plausible.
yeah.
One thing, and again, this my lack of understanding of the sextant, though I've read about it so many times, it still just doesn't sink in. One of the things that his detractors will point out is the fact that trying to use a sextant at that time of the year is going to be not exactly reference point. But the sun was so low in the horizon all the time.
Yes, I am Joe.
Fixed to.
But I have no idea how often they had clear days. You could also use stars.
That's a good point. And I haven't seen any when they were making that final drive. If it was clear, it totally makes sense. But this information gives me the impression that it wasn't clear day. God, the other day I was listening to a recording. I was like,
Yeah, it would be hard if it was cloudy and the sun's under the horizon. Well, yeah. Real
it's
difficult.
not. I mean, we've all seen the sun go down and it's on the horizon, and it's not exactly a fix. It's not because of the atmosphere. It's not going to look or be where it actually is. It's going to have the distortion issue.
Oh, yeah.
Final theory: they both, either intentionally or not, faked it. It sounded like a phone buzzing, and I realize now and both of them probably knew it. That's what this theory is getting at.
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, the second half of this, which is Perry. Turns out there's problems with the writings that he left behind, his data from the trip. Now,
What happened is that in 2011, a group of
anything or hardly anything, just very basic details. Eventually, that his papers would get released about a decade. No, shut up.
well,
Almost 100 years.
I
Now,
did not
the
realize
National
that.
Geographic Society had them, and they had looked at them, but they didn't release them. And it wasn't until about 10 or 15 years ago that they finally were put out and people could really, really analyze them. And, well, it turns out that his numbers didn't exactly work. People have tried to trace the route based on what he had.
Bored.
Of the North Pole.
Yeah, and that's interesting that they wouldn't release. That's why they didn't release him, huh?
Here's the other really hinky thing, and I don't know why this flew, but in the beginning, Devin, bestowed upon him by the U.S. House of Representatives. They gave him the title. There was an act that was passed through that.
Peter Heinrich.
Oh, Joe?
Excuse me.
It's an honorific.
Okay, so it's like it's an honorary title. So he was never like he didn't work his way up through the ranks.
Correct. They
all.
gave him an honorary title.
Was he ever even in the Navy?
No.
Oh, okay.
He might have. Yeah, actually, he might have been at one point. But the point is, he was given this title. But one of the things that had to happen first was he had to go and talk to a Navy.
Absolutely. So anyway, I'm just kidding.
His stuff to look at, and he gave them his journal that he said.
Excuse me. Okay, so let's start again.
Just say Paul.
Here's the thing. When these guys are up at the North Pole, it's not like they're packing, kale and carrots and all these. One of the things that Arctic explorers in the day took with them is what is called pemmican. Kind of looks gross. It's a greasy mix of fat.
Yeah, I like
You'll
that.
see it kind of in a ball sometimes.
Yeah, or in like sort of flat cakes, hockey puck, shaped like a hockey puck.
If you've ever picked up greasy meats and eaten them by hand, you know how much of that stuff gets on your fingers. Now, then combine that with the fact that they're in the Arctic. It's not like they can wash their hands off and their stuff off.
Mm-hmm.
That
They're gonna be
fingerprints
dirty.
of that stuff should be on everything.
Yeah,
His
especially
book
the journal.
He asked him about it, and he stood by the fact of, nope, that's it, that's the one. So
Really?
this is
So
another.
he actually swore. If you were totally BSing, I think what I would have said is, it was such a disgusting mess.
Usually is.
I'm gonna close the door. So that's what I would have told him.
Yeah, I mean, and nobody probably would have said anything if he had said, listen, the other one is kind of going, it's going a little.
Then Chibuzo can sleep outside.
He probably wouldn't have worried about that.
Yeah, but this was way back in the day, though, right? And then did that
1910.
And did that journal go back to the National Geographic Society, or did Perry keep it?
I'm not positive. Perry's papers are in more than one place.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know who holds that journal.
Sure, somebody somewhere has got it.
Probably.
Yeah.
There's also some issues with the speed that. Got some land records so that he and his 5 companions. 25 miles, 20 miles, 20 miles, 25 miles, and then 40 miles.
No.
Uh-huh.
Final day, they traveled 40 miles in that.
Oh, we're back. Sorry.
Miles a day in the Arctic on foot. Bit fast.
Yeah,
Really
that's a
fast.
lot speedier than Cook went, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cook was averaging 15
Abercat.
Miles.
Yeah.
No.
You want to hear my favorite detractor of Perry?
Yeah.
This is my absolute favorite, and that is there is a man by the name of Marshall B. Gardner. And he wrote a book called A Journey to the Earth's Interior, which is a hollow Earth book, all about the fact that the Earth is actually hollow. And he says that there is no way that either man actually made it to the...
To go. Say goodbye, beans.
Goodbye, beans.
Temperature was rising, the ice was melting, and it was going to be open sea because... on a boat, they would have gone to the North Pole and discovered the entry to the hollow Earth and then been able to explore that. So that obviously is...
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't understand
so-
what your problem is. It's
yeah, and so-
accepted science fact.
Yeah. Well,
Thinking Sideways.
Eventually went back and looked at his and declared that
He didn't actually
he
make
didn't
it.
prove it. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
unproven.
They went from totally did it. You made it to the North Pole claim is unproven.
Yeah.
Now, of course,
So,
they still
yeah.
left Cook's claim as disproven
Yeah. Well,
because he didn't have anything. So they said, well, you're totally making it up.
Yeah,
You
I
don't even
don't-
have anything to support this claim, so we're just going to throw it out.
You never know.
Is McKinley of the mountain not past what is called the gateway, which is the final ascent. People have started looking at his writing and based on his writing, and it turns out they made it to the peak.
Yeah, there are people,
They
more than
went-
one set of people have actually duplicated